Jeff, screw GDC. I flew all the way out to San Francisco for this moment. To know that you needed to sit down here and watch me play a Yoshi's Island game. It doesn't matter that this one isn't very good.
This is the definitive Yoshi's Island experience. I have played through some of this game myself, and I'm proud to report that it is just as bad as the original.
I think no, it's worse than the original. But that's it. That makes me sound like a monster to say that.
Yeah.
Look what you've made me say. So this is Yoshi's New Island. It's not a bad game, but I give the game 3 stars. It's especially by Nintendo standards. I think it is a average Nintendo platformer is a pretty disappointing game.
Yeah. So I feel like maybe I'm asking questions we should talk about at the end of this, but that's exactly how I felt about the original Yoshi's Island.
Okay.
So what is it about this game that you think makes it not live up to your standard? Your standard for that original game.
So the art is one good way. So it really feels like, I think even you have to admit that Yoshi's Island looks pretty cool. Right?
Yes, parts of it look interesting. How about that?
You know what? I'm gonna take it. You know what? I'm not gonna push my luck.
Yeah.
But it's a really unique game. If you go back and look at the history of that game, like when Miyamoto talks about it, like it was made partially as a direct response to like Donkey Kong Country, and Donkey Kong Country feeling like is this really the future of game aesthetics?
Yeah.
Like that's maybe a terrifying, horrible future. And the messiness of that game is something I really love about it. It's sort of like a controlled chaos with the sort of the crayon look, and this game just feels like someone's really trying hard to imitate that without any sense of what made that work. And I would say that is summarizes my feelings on this game as a whole.
And it seems like they're kind of mixing styles in some cases.
Yeah.
You'll have like a crayon style animated background, but then like all the foreground stuff is this kind of you think about it, like Yoshi and Baby Mario, they're not too far off from a Donkey Kong Country kind of 3D-ish look.
No, yeah, it kind of feels like in general, like with this stuff, they went for like a kind of a claymation sort of thing, but it looks terrible. It looks way better on the 3DS, which is sort of the MO that you kind of have to have every time Nintendo shows a new 3DS game, is that like the resolution of screenshots and trailers that need to be posted on websites in 2014 is like well beyond the resolution of a 3DS screen.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you get games like Zelda, I think, that looks a ton better on a 3DS.
Right. Yes.
Than it did in screenshots. But this game just looks it just looks like they're trying to capture what was unique about Yoshi's Island and just not really pulling it off. And that's really how the gameplay works too. It really feels like they sort of checkboxed, like, all right, we need this, like we
need this like terrible egg throwing mechanic. So that's, you want to talk about like original Yoshi's Island or like what my problem actually is? I think this like stop and like rotate this aiming reticle that automatically moves is terrible.
Well, you can stop it.
The fact that I can't just point in a direction and aim it myself is awful. Awful. And it's stuff that, like, especially you look at, like, I'm really surprised that it is still in this game, because this should be a touchscreen thing of, like, draw in a direction to aim and have, like, or use the analog stick to aim analog and shoot these eggs.
Right.
Like a more modern, like the idea that they didn't touch that at all. Like, no, this is core. This is key to the Yoshi's Island experience. This terrible moving reticle. We have to get that. Like, that to me is the thing. I look at this game and go, like, you people are insane.
Well, I think if you were to separate that, like if you even try and think of that logistically, like how would you use the DS with your right hand while also controlling and jumping this character? Like, I think you'd be talking about sort of a fundamentally different sort of experience, like maybe a different type of game.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good too.
Like, it's not a very challenging game, which I don't think is necessarily initially a knock, but like if you look at Mario 3D Land, Mario 3D World, like a lot of recent Nintendo platformers tend to start pretty easy for like the first couple of worlds, and then eventually the game says, all right, if you want to keep playing this, then we're gonna sort of ratchet up what you're doing. And that happens in this game, but in the last world. And I kind of got the sense maybe at that point, like, oh, this is gonna be like, Mario games.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get 6
you're
more
gonna
worlds.
switch it on right here. But.
I'm gonna get 6 more worlds of this, and that just never happens. And it, you know, baby platformer, like it's not. It's got a baby, so maybe it makes sense, but like it's just not very fun. Like it's just not that interesting. It like has some decent core mechanics that it apes pretty well, I think, from Yoshi's Island, and like I found myself like enjoying it, but like playing it largely when I was doing other things, watching TV. And it's like, I'm kind of enjoying what I'm doing, but not enough to actually engage with it on a really profound level.
Right.
And by the end of it, like, I didn't feel like I wasted my time, but I couldn't really tell you what happened during that time. Like, I just kind of played a game. And that's really disappointing. Like, often, like, it really does feel like they're checkboxing with this game. Like, all right, we're gonna throw in, you know, like watermelons, which are one of the items in Yoshi's Island where he can spit seeds or spit fire. And those are in there, and like they appear and then they disappear, and they don't do anything interesting with them. It's like, well, we've got to have this in here because, of course, like this is what you put in a Yoshi's Island game, right? But then don't do anything with it. So they've changed the vehicle sections, which is these. They're now an on-rails experience where you tilt the 3DS in order to navigate through. Which isn't, it's not that great. It's not that great. It is so disappointing that this game is not that great. It bums me out, not even because just I'm a fan, because I wanted to rub it in your face.
Yep, yeah.
And when you messaged me and said like, hey, do you want to review this? I was like, well, like not really, I'm playing a lot of other games. But I was like, no, like this is the logical conclusion.
This is where this goes.
This has to go in this direction. Like, you know, this is how we decide things at Giant Bomb. Like, we need to take this joke to its inevitable conclusion. I was like, oh, I hope this game's great. I hope this game's great. Like, that's how this has to end. And instead, to like play like, not even a bad game, just like a really middling game.
Right. It's like this thing of like, you know, maybe this didn't need to actually exist. And but yeah, like for me, it is straight up, it is everything I don't like about the original game. Also, you know.
So that's the thing. Like it.
Like I think Yoshi works better as an occasional piece. In Super Mario World, you have your levels where you're like, okay, you get Yoshi at the start, and Yoshi is fun in certain situations, but he is not the star, and it does not have this stupid egg thing. This stupid egg thing.
Well, this game serves like no one, right? Like, it doesn't make me happy. Like, it's not like hey, we made another Yoshi's Island game for the hardcore player that has a lot of nostalgia for that. Like, they kind of harp on that, but don't do much with it. Yeah. And it's not for you, where it's like, hey, you know, let's make a different one of those, and maybe we can get in a different crowd. Like, I don't know who this game was made for. I don't.
Well, I would assume they think that they're satisfying people who like the original game.
You know what I actually think it is, though? I think it's just like they want to keep those developers at Artoon around.
Oh, did Artoon do this?
Is it? So Artoon made like Blinks and stuff, right?
Yeah. But they did a really good GBA game. Platformer with the bee. Pinobee?
Yeah, that was a good game. So I don't think they exist anymore, but I think the principals behind that studio made another studio. Oh. I think. I might have my timeline wrong there, but like it is that design lineage. Like it's that studio. And
see, that's disappointing to me for a whole new reason now.
That it's not just a Pinobee sequel.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I don't know, like there's this. If you look at Nintendo's development history, they tend to, once you're kind of in with them, they keep giving you work.
Yeah. Like Brownie Brown is working on something somewhere.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like Nintendo just keeps giving studios like this work, but like they don't give them the A-level franchises. Like they give you like Yoshi's Island.
Look, I know what you mean by that. But this game literally has Mario in it.
It does.
You can't say that this is not an A-level franchise because it is them.
It is, but like
it is an A-level franchise and them ruining it, like they did with the original game. It was like, hey, here's this game with this characters from like some of the greatest games ever made in it, but we made this one a baby, and then you're on the Yoshi all the time, and it's kind of trash. Touch Fuzzy, Get Dizzy. Like that's.
You know what? And this game doesn't even have that.
It does not have a Touch Fuzzy, Get Dizzy equivalent.
No. Like I don't think. What are you doing? Why does this name?
It seems like that makes me think that this game was made in a vacuum by people who don't understand why maybe people here
Yeah.
Where the Touch Fuzzy Get Dizzy was, you know, kind of a little fun, little joke.
Yeah.
People bring it up when they think about the game.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like no one consulted the Yoshi's Island fan base? I don't know, like...
Well, it makes me wonder if Nintendo themselves quite understands, like, does this fall on, you know, maybe some less than stellar game developers that made this, or is this somehow reflective of Nintendo themselves not really understanding what it is about that game that people really dig?
Yeah.
I think that's entirely possible. Or maybe the reception to Yoshi's Island in Japan is different than sort of like the memes that have taken over and
they kind of define that game today.
Yeah, for the audience that does love it. And even for you, I would recommend, despite the fact that you don't like Yoshi's Island, if you went and watched the speedruns for this game.
Oh, they're super interesting.
They're like, Trihex, I think, is like the guy that most people know as the definitive Yoshi's Island
I've watched some
player.
of that stuff, like just to get a sense of like what high-level Yoshi's Island play looks like.
It's nuts. Like,
yeah, it's all just like precision egg throwing and a lot of.
But a lot of like
stuff.
a really weird use of like the floaty mechanic. What was that last big streaming, like?
Awesome games done quick.
Yes. So Trihex did one of those and played Yoshi's Island. I watched like 3 or 4 hours of it. Like it's, you know, I think, you know, when you look at this game, all the things you hate about it lead to really quirky levels of advanced play in a way that a high-level player of this game takes advantage of the floatiness.
Not necessarily this game, but the original.
Yes, the original game. Yeah. Although he said he's going to play this, and I had chatted with him about talking about what he thinks about this game, which I think would be really fascinating to listen to. You know, whether you like Yoshi's Island or not, it's a weird-ass game. Like that, you know, I somewhat ironically champion it, even though I really do like the game and its core mechanics. Like, I love the fact that it's so strange. And this one is just like strange in like not really enjoyable ways. Like it's just strangely average and does feel like it was made by people that maybe didn't want to make a Yoshi's Island game. Like maybe they were just assigned, all right, we gotta make a Yoshi's Island game. Let's go through and look at how was that game made? What are the mechanics? Okay, let's make another one of those. Like, why not give this to some like young independent developer in America? Like, let them go wild with making a Yoshi's Island game. That could be super neat, but...
I think you could say that about a lot of Nintendo franchises, is like really just, regardless of where the studios are based, just like that amount of changing of the guard. Like people developing things that are reactions to the modern takes on these franchises instead of trying to be faithful for the sake of being faithful. Like that, I feel like that there's like a really interesting like art style subline of Nintendo games where they're like, hey, we gave, you know, Metroid to someone totally crazy, and here's what they came back with, and we, you know, like we gave Yoshi to this guy, and here's what they came with. Like I think that would be really fascinating as like a non-canon subline or something, but I don't think that they.
Yeah, I wonder that about Nintendo sometimes, like, you know, when they do like the NES remix stuff, right? Like, which is like their first
like a
sort of weird acknowledgement of like ROM hacking and, you know, stuff that's been around for a long time that, you know, in many ways is doing far more interesting things with their old IP than they sometimes do because they play things so safe.
And that's the NES remix is like the prime example of like at some point someone doesn't understand what it is about those old games that make them interesting today, and the sorts of things you could be doing with those old games now, because of just how poorly they take advantage of that stuff and how poorly they twist it for that remix game. Like that thing is, it's a travesty. It could have been so amazing.
It's such a great idea.
Yeah, totally.
And I think, you know, I'm glad they're doing it, like, because, you know, there is time to course correct. Like, there's a way to do that.
They've already announced a sequel, so they're working on more of that. And I seriously doubt they will change anything about it.
Probably not, but like, you know, you look at stuff like this, like Yoshi's New Island being such a missed opportunity, and NES Remix being a missed opportunity, and I understand why they're so careful about their franchises, and there's like good reason to.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You know, the fact that Nintendo isn't more exploitative of their stuff is a testament to why you know, they've been able to maintain these brands for so long, right? Like,
I feel like they're
too safe, though, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But I also think that they exploit some franchises constantly and leave others alone. You know, it's like they're never not thinking about the next. They're never not being asked about or thinking about the next Zelda game.
Right.
You know, it's not like Kid Icarus where it's like this is gonna come back once and then, you know, hey, guess what? We made you because you demanded it. We made a new Kid Icarus game, and well, that's that.
Here you go.
Congratulations.
Which is actually kind of how this feels, right? Like, hey, you guys wanted another Yoshi's Island game?
Totally. Well, here
it
go.
is.
Yeah. Congratulations.
But like, you think about like, man, like what if Nintendo just said, all right, Ed McMillan, go make a non-canonical Zelda game.
Yep. That'd be
right?
cool. Yeah.
Like, here's a couple $1 million, go wild. We're working on our other big Zelda game, but here's something strange we want to branch out and let developers do some weird things. Like Square Enix is starting to toy with this idea, right?
Yeah.
With their little like developer outreach program that you can use some of their IPs.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a cool idea. I don't know if like it's gonna work for Square Enix or whether it'll be interesting.
Right.
But like conceptually, it's awesome.
And it's so far away from anything Square would have done even 5 years ago.
Right.
Just the way that they view their IP and how protective they are, they were of it. And how protective they probably still are. I mean, remains to be seen if they'll actually make good on that stuff. But
right, like they're not gonna let you make a Final Fantasy game, or something like that. But like if they, you know, if more publishers, Nintendo or otherwise, just took it, you know, maybe they're not gonna let you make a Mario or Zelda game. Like, look at the dead franchises that still have cult followings, and there are, have probably inspired hundreds.
Why isn't Messhoff making a new Urban Champion?
Yes, but that's what I mean. Like, you have these games that, you know, developers would like kill to work on and go weird and do strange things with, that I think games like Yoshi's New Island show that a lot of times these companies don't understand why some people are so obsessive with some of these games.
Yeah.
And if you just gave it to those people, I think, you know, it's no guarantee of success and maybe a horrible failure, but it'd be a lot more interesting than this. Like, I know I'm not gonna get Cactus to go work on a new Yoshi's New Island, but stuff like that, like what's the harm? Like, what's it really gonna do for some of these dead franchises that aren't going anywhere anyway?
Yeah. But regardless, like this, whether you like the original or not, it seems like this game is at best average.
Yes. Yeah. As someone that really does like the original, and wanted something, would have been fine with just more of the same, to be quite honest. This is not even that. If you're into Nintendo platformers, you know, you have affinity for Yoshi's Island, this is a game to maybe think about on an eShop sale or something like that. But there are other games to play right now that I would not rush out to play Yoshi's New Island. And Jeff, that really bums me out.
I knew it all along.
Why did I fly to San Francisco for this? That's Yoshi's New Island. It's out now.